What is the worst franchise in sports, Francis? Max Kellerman, someone actually I watch pretty regularly because I'm a big boxing fan, and he's always on The Fight Game, Jim Lampley, and a lot of HBO's boxing coverage. And is now took over for a while, or not a while, but a couple weeks at this point, for Skip Bayless on First Take. So one of the things I noticed real quick about First Take in general is that, yes, when you sign on to do that show, you have to up your reactionary value to a program. So I thought maybe it was a Stephen A. Skip Bayless thing. And then I realized when you're watching Max Kellerman that Max Kellerman goes a little bit outside of being who he really is for that show, right? In a way. It's called angling.
Yeah.
Is what I'm really calling it. I call it angling because that's what some of the people I know in this business call it. And in this case, he went on a great rant because I'm a Knicks fan and we want people to loathe with us. We want to be miserable together. Okay, we want to hit the bottle hard because we have to watch our team play and lose on opening night to the Cavaliers regularly. And here's his take. Here's the audio from his take on why the Knicks are the worst franchise in sports.
3 years old, I have yet to see a Knicks championship. Now, New York City, sorry Cleveland, and many other places, Hong Kong, London, Tokyo, Moscow, whatever you want to mention, let alone LA, DC, or Chicago, New York City is the center of the known universe. It is the most important place on earth by any objective measure. And New York City is basketball crazy. It is the #1 sport in the city. Don't believe the hype about the Yankees. They're the hugest franchise and all that, but that's only because the Knicks don't win. Proof. In the late 80s, when Patrick Ewing was leading a very good but not great team, they didn't win any championships, the Knicks got $1,500 a pop for courtside seats. What were the Yankees getting for their best seat at the time, or the Giants? $100, something like that? And it's not even a supply or demand issue. When you look at the number of tickets available, there's no way the Knicks should have been getting 10 times what the Giants and Yankees got, and yet they did it. There has been zero competition until very recently in the 5 boroughs for the fans' affections. The Nets were in Jersey for the longest. There's no competition, and yet with no competition in the most crazy basketball place in the world, which is also the center of the known universe, the ineptitude of this franchise, and forget about just the 43 years no chips, they are frequently a laughing stock. They're not a well-run organization that just fails to go all the way a lot of the time. They are frequently a laughing stock with James Dolan, arguably the worst owner in sports. The Knicks are, in fact, the answer, considering the city, considering the level of basketball interest, and considering their not only futility in the postseason, but their laughingstock status on an annual basis. They are the worst franchise in sports, Stephen A. Smith.
There it is. There it is. They are the worst franchise in sports. Well, we have to narrow that down a little bit because we live in the United States of America, and the very American mentality is that there's only 4 sports that exist in this world, and that is just not true. Kellerman would argue that there's 5 sports that exist in this world, boxing. However, he makes a compelling argument. The city of New York, it being the mecca of basketball, the talent, he mentions the 5 boroughs, there's no competition for the Knicks, all the fans. He makes the point about the ticket prices, the Knicks being a show, there being the Broadway lights at Madison Square Garden, all of that taken into place. He mentions that James Dolan is probably the most incompetent owner in sports, but at least he's not a bad person. Because I can name 2 organizations that have they're run worse than that of the Knicks, and they also have less to show for it. One, the Cleveland Browns. Year after year. I can't tell you how many times in my life, by the way, it's Halloween, so here's a picture of last year. Somebody sent this to me on my Facebook, of somebody who decorated their house as a graveyard of Cleveland Browns quarterbacks that have been selected over the past 20 years. Amazing. Secondly, they're 0-6 again this year. There's a chance that they go 0-16. There's a chance that the Cavs won the Cavs won the championship, that the Indians win the World Series, and the Browns get the first overall pick in the draft again, right? And then the other organization, just because he's such a complete and utter, subhuman at times, to quote Ben Mankiewicz. Dan Snyder is up there as one of the worst people in ownership of sports, right? I get it. You know, owners have such an incomprehensible amount of money to people in this world because to them, owning a sports franchise is a toy. It's the same way I look at my PlayStation. I get to use it for fun. A lot of the owners have this mentality of, well, this is my toy. It goes along with my toy yacht, my toy mansions on 3 different continents, and my toy this, my toy that. Dan Snyder, on the other hand, and it's not like the pigskins have anything to show for it in the last 15, 20 years, but they are at least winning games, right? They're pretty much on par with the Knicks in terms of bad sports performances, but not, they're not finishing worst in the league. I'm curious, Francis, if you think in America, if there's any worse owner organizations, and globally, what's the worst organization in sports? There's got to be one.
It's far too broad of a question. Like, what do you categorize as the worst?
I'll give you categories, not to cut you off. I'll give you categories. Okay. For one, record. Like, are you winning games? Because that will excuse anything. If you win Super Bowls, you can be the most incompetent owner of all time. You can be the biggest POS on the planet. But most fans will be like, no, it's fine. That's being sarcastic. So record, I would say owner's character, because that should be called into question for a lot of these guys. Donald Sterling, for a while, you could have called the Clippers the worst organization in sports because Donald Sterling was a racist POS once again. I'll go with, so owner's character and record. We'll call it that.
That's such an American way of looking at things because owners just, apart from Chelsea, just don't have, it's more like managers that help in adjusting a team's record at the end of the season. Like, you have owners have such a control over the franchises here because it is more ran out like a business than anywhere else in the world. Right. Yeah, you can look at teams like Man United who had the Glazers in charge, but I mean, Man United's history and their record shows that they're still a good football team, so I would never consider them the worst or one of the worst, in the same way as Real Madrid have money from Perez and money from the King of Spain and all that stuff. It's not exactly the most authentic way to kind of get your wealth, but they still win, and they're still a good team who have good players and are good to root for. So I honestly would just keep this to America, because I want to discuss more so about what it focuses on here. I think that he makes a good point for the New York Knicks, and I think he passes over one of the most important factors as to why it's so hard to not categorize the Knicks as one of the worst, is because hope. There is hope every year. There is hope for people who root for a team like the New York Knicks because, as you mentioned, a place like Madison Square Garden, Theatre of Dreams, all these amazing basketball players who have previously played in there, Ewing, and just like the names go on. But they don't win, and they don't seem, the owners don't seem to care.
We don't even get close.
You don't get close. The owners don't seem to care enough about it because rather than try to build a team, what I see, and I may be off on this, is that they want to build an instant success story by bringing in players, regardless of their form or anything else, but just because they're a big name and they might sell a couple extra jerseys. Bringing in Derrick Rose, who, by the way, might turn out to be a good point guard. I'm not going to say anything, but his history, his injury worries are a problem. Carmelo Anthony putting all the eggs in that one basket, who hasn't been able to deliver you, and I don't think building a good enough team around it. So I think that one of the main things that separates them from a Cleveland Browns, who are an awful organization with awful drafts every year, with awful quarterbacks going back in history and no winning record. The thing that separates them, I think, is because no one believes that the Cleveland Browns are going to win. No one is like, yep, this is our years.
You know what, that's a good point.
It's the Browns, we're going to do it. But the New York Knicks are like, all right, we can maybe get into the playoffs, maybe try to work things around it. It's that hope that kills fans. It's that hope that's a problem. The same thing can be said for the Philadelphia Eagles. You're like, that hope, like you think that this could possibly happen. If the Cubs don't win this year, they are up there as one of the best teams in the MLB, but are they one of the worst teams to support because you're so close each year and then just dragged away from you? It might happen inevitably, but at that moment, the Chicago Cubs, if they don't win, will be one of the worst teams to try and root for.
And the Ricketts family supports Donald Trump, so, there's that too. Comment below, like, favorite, subscribe to the channel, to the videos. If you're watching this over on Pluto TV, we are also on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and they all have the same name, TYT Sports. On Twitter, at JaceRoom91, at Francis_Maxwell, and once again, the same is behind me. Get low.